I have been, this is a, boy, this could end up being 3 or 4 weeks worth of material here. And so I was basically just being absorbed in the whole thing. So I didn't have a clear step-by-step thing to give you. This is going to be going over the books of Galatians and Acts. And there's and some stuff in pertinent in Deuteronomy, a comparison, you might say, which is it's pretty big. So I don't know that we can necessarily cover there's no way to cover it all today, but we'll see how far it goes.
I'm going to open up in prayer then, and I already pressed the record button. So, Father, thank you for everybody joining. Thank you for this topic we're about to get into. Father, people listen to it with an open heart, your open heart, and not be offended by it, because it could go there. In Yahuwah's name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I'm going to shut off the the cameras, and we'll see you in an hour.
Okay, so I don't recall whether last week I was able to say this last verse or whether it got in the after show, but this had to do with Zechariah 6, verse 8. We were talking about the Zechariah had a vision. An angel was standing there, and he sees these 4 chariots coming up between the 2 mountains of copper, and the chariots had different colored horses. And that concludes with the gray horses going forth. Well, my translation there of chapter 6, Zechariah 6, verse 7, then the gray go forth, seeking those whose aim is to walk as directed on earth, as consenting favorably. And that phrase, I will favorably consent proactively to be on this run, this quest, this aim, is the word earth itself, Aleph Resh Zadi, Aleph being the prefix I will, Resh Zadi to run, take on, engage this gamut, running enthusiastically with desire. So Resh Zadi is the word that has to do with desire. Although if you see the word just spelled Aleph Resh Zadi, it's typically just translated earth or land. To them, to they who halakha, and that word halakha, I remember hearing when I was going at this this place called just a Torah study, which was a Bible study that met on Saturday, 10, 12 hours long, in lieu of or in the stead of going to church, to a church service that might last an hour or two. I'd never heard of this word halakha. Well, them Jews, they got halakha and takanot. They make up stuff. So halakha was just rules, regulations, obligations of the Jews. Do what the rabbis tell you to do. That's not exactly true. Now, they do have their own customs, traditions, ways, as they understand it, as they're applying their mind to Scripture. But this word halakha, Yahuwah uses the word himself quite often. Hey lamed kaf, halakha, and it literally means live, walk, travel in the frame of mind as was led, guided, and directed by Yahuwah himself, proceeding according to custom. Yeah, them Jews. No, it's not the Jews' custom. It's Yahuwah's custom of the kingdom, his kingdom, the kingdom of heaven. As a process of judicial action, which is to say, legally, we have a contract, we have stipulations of agreement, and if you're going to prosecute a case, it has to be according to those terms as stipulated, and that word terms as stipulated is the word dabar. It's not 10 commandments written on tables of stone, it's 10 debarim, 10 matters as stipulated. The word command is chok, chet kuf, or it's zadi vav, as in mem zadi vav tav mitzvot, which is also the exact same word as matzah. matzot, which means to find out how to do something. Continuing as a wayfarer on walkabout. Now, this term walkabout is a very particular term that the Aborigines in Australia use, where you just pick up your whole clan and you just start walking, and you're just going out there to encounter for a couple months, probably, or whatever length of time. You just go and you'll come back when you get back, if you get back. That's called being on walkabout, along the course of earth. So this phrase of halakha, and then the hey is a prefix, so you'll find sometimes other prefixes, the tav or the yod. And then you'll see no prefix, as in there's a certain parashah that's titled lek lakah, which is simply lamed kaf, lamed kaf. The first two words of that writing are translated, go, get out. So that's what Yahuwah said to Abraham, pick up and leave from your country where you live, your kinsmen, and just go to a land that I will show you. So lakah, lamed kaf. Lamed is the separate staff of authority, the pictograph, and kaf is an open hand. But the authority of an open hand, well, what is an open hand? An open hand, like this way is an offer, a gesture, that way is a covering, that way is a pushing. Maka, mem kaf, is to hit, to smack. I'm just saying you can sit there and read the pictographs and try to get some sense. You can look at the dictionary, get some sense. You can look at various translations of, does it mean just going, or does it mean get out of here, as if with disgust, or as a command? It's all those things. And as you set your mind on how to look at this, you'll ponder the meandering. By the way, what, Kurt, maybe you can step in here. What's the name of that channel that Jenny and put up about looking at the paleo words? How do people access that?
It's right on our channel, right here. We're going to do like the first 4 on, we're going to post them here and then we'll post it there. And it's.
So that's where you all are going over a little bit slower.
Right.
Going over some of these same rules or procedures of interpreting or being able to see and look into what these words actually mean. Just want to give a heads up to people to know that that's there. So this, going back to Zechariah 6 verse 7, speaking about these gray horses. So
sorry, let me better. It's Paleo Katana. That's what the name of the teaching is, and it will have its own channel.
And the reason why there's a picture, the background of some Japanese samurai swords, is that the word katana is actually spelled with a K. English letters for Japanese phonetics is the name of one of their swords. And there was another name of a sword for another level of class that you're going to do. And what was that called? Oda Kai, I believe. Oda Kai.
I think it's Odachi, but I could be wrong.
Phonetics. See, the CHI, most people write the letter het as CH, as in Chanukah. It's not a CH. There's no CH sound in Hebrew. It's a guttural scraping sound. So just to mess around, well, I look at CHI and say, well, that could be het yod. Well, het yod is the word for life. Oda, well, ayin dalet is, you'd pronounced it as ed or perhaps ode, because it's the O equivalent in the numerical or the chronological sequencing of the letters, the letter ayin with the English letter O. And if you look in the Klein's dictionary for ayin dalet yod, od prefix is choice, best, treasure, and adornment, bejewelment, ornamentation. So oda, hey suffix instead of yod, this is just trying to look at the structure of the language, is to say, well, ayin dalet is a witness or a testimony. So this is expressing the testimony of bejewelment, chet yod, which is life, or the fact that Elohim Yahuwah is the maker, the inventor, the creator, the sustainer and imparter, the giver of life, and not just breathing life on the face of the earth, but in Psalms it says that Yahweh commands the blessing, Chaim ed ha'olam, that ayin dalet there again, live until forever. So he retains the jurisdiction over this eternal life. So to say this expression, this ayin dalet can also mean a period of time or infinity, like to infinity, for forever and ever, to infinity and beyond, you know, the Toy Story thing. Ayin dalet is that voice of witness. So witness, the witness of life, that would be the Oda Chai, not Oda Chai, so it's just play on words. Just so people know, like the word for samurai, these are some samurai swords. The word samurai, S-M-R-I, would be the four sounds. Well, that's Shin Mem Resh Yod. Shin Mem Resh, literally shomer, for my doing it, is shamri, or samurai. Same four sounds, Japanese with Hebrew. And it's translated watch, keep, guard, and remove the dregs, which is to say, if you've got wine with sediment in the bottom or tea with a bunch of tea leaves floating around and you got to filter it out so you can have a clean drink, or rake the pine cones and sticks off the path and rocks so you don't twist your ankle as you're walking, that's all samurai. The idea that there's something to filter, there's something to purge, there's something to look close at and say, wait a minute, what do we got going on here? Just a little, the reason for this backdrop here is like, well, there's these, it's not exactly camouflage, it's not exactly black and white, but Elohim put stuff in our path and says, now I'm expecting you to take heed and to watch, listen to my voice, and your job is to get rid of the bad stuff. What? That's part of the task of walking on earth. So you go back to this Zechariah 6:7, the graves, so they established, strengthening, empowering with courage and boldness, ensuring correctness in their journey. So their pathway beneath their feet is honest truth. Well, why should it be anything other? Because we're humans having an earth experience, and it looks like Yahweh has determined to test us and try us. And I heard somebody say once, I think it was a preacher, God doesn't test anybody. He does, absolutely. Well, if you don't know that that's the agenda, in other words, if you've got this variegated, oh, which one is the right path? Which one is the right line? What am I looking for? It's kind of, things are kind of blended and they're kind of gray tones and there's nothing so clear, black and white. And it's like part of the adventure of being Yahuwah's people. He tells us what to do, and then he opens the door and says, now go do it. It's like, well, you come with us. Now I told you, now remember, the people of Israel gave Elohim such a difficult time. He said to Moshe, I'm done. I'm gonna wipe them all out. I'm gonna kill them all if I go with them. So I'm gonna just send this angel. He'll go with you, and you just make sure you don't get him mad, because if you get him mad, he's gonna kill you. And Moshe said, if you're not going with us, I don't want to go. You just kill me now. We're done. Oh, gosh. So a number of times, Elohim has been pushed right to the edge of his tolerance And when a fellow like Moshe or Abraham might step in, or Yeshua, or even King David, why does he listen to a certain voice to pull back his anger that's been right to the extreme? Why does he listen to some voices and not others? Well, if we look close at the story, the voices of the people he listens to are the ones that are walking in his ways. The ones that are walking in his ways. The ones that have a heart close to his heart. What does that mean to have a heart close to his heart? What does it mean to walk in his ways? It's like, what if all these lines were different paths? Oh, just take any one. It all gets to God up at the top of the mountain. I heard a guy tell me that once years ago. It's like, oh, there's many paths. And then when you get to the top of the mountain, you realize, oh, they're just paths from all different sides of the mountains, but they all culminate at the same place, right on top of the mountain. It's like, and that's where you have that guru sitting there, contemplating and giving profundities. But it's like, well, what if your objective is to get off the mountain, off this rock, and get to heaven? Boy, if you're trying to get to heaven, now you might want to find the one path that leads you to the launch pad of the rocket that will take you up. I'm playing with metaphors here. I'm not saying that that's the objective, but that's a concept objective that we're going to bump into in a couple minutes. So I'm just reading this thing about the gray horses, Zechariah chapter 6, verse 7. And apparently these gray horses have either asked the angel, hey, let us go do this. Let us go run around the earth doing what? Strengthening and establishing the people that want to walk on the right path. It's like, well, the very next verse, chapter 6, verse 8, Ve'i Za'ak, Zion Ayin Kuf, burst out shouting, cry, call to assemble, Aleph Tav Yod. Well, Aleph Tav Yod is simply the word me, but I could read that as my Aleph Tav. Call to assemble, outcry, burst out shouting, my Aleph Tav, Vav Yod Debar. That word debar, that's just not speak or word. That's like the 10 debarim, the 10 matters. It's like the matters that he or it, referencing his Aleph Tav. Debar also means to lead and guide. It's a synonym with the word roe, which is shepherd. And I think this might be going over a little bit from last week. I'm not sure whether I said it on tape or not, but Debaran, so the noon suffix to debar is eloquence, or to be able to speak well. Debar with a tav ending is excessive, loquacious. Logorrhea is one of the words. Like there's diarrhea, then there's logorrhea. This constant talking. Anyway, Aleph Lamed Yod means to me. Aleph Lamed is typically a prefix that can be negative or positive. It means in the motion toward, but can also mean to not move. It's why would they do that? Why would that language have one word meaning two things? Well, maybe a sentence can be taken both ways. But then there's the word lamer, saying resh aleph hey. Well, if you look at that word resh aleph hey in the dictionary, it means to see. So it's just the ability to use your eyeballs, but it also means to be put on exhibition or to allow to see. So for Elohim, allowing somebody to comprehend the leading, guiding of his Aleph Tav. Well, what's that? If you didn't know English and somebody said, look, there's all these different paths, you should take the one that's a medium gray color. It's like, medium gray? Well, if you don't know the language, it's just a bunch of paths. For him to use certain words that allow you to see certain things, or here, put on these special glasses. And like, for example, if you're doing construction and you have a laser and you're trying to sight some lines for forms, for level, you can't see. You put on these red glasses and then you can see the laser line, but it's not clear to the naked eye. There's various other examples that you might be able to think of like that, where if you put on certain spectacles, you can see things that are otherwise invisible. So this word resh aleph hey, to allow to perceive or to understand or see what is otherwise not possible to see. My Aleph Tav. And then there's the Hey Yod Vav Zadi Aleph Yod Mem. Well, that word Zadi Aleph is a synonym with Lamed Kaf, meaning go, get out of here. And again, it has to do with, let's just use the word excretion to blow something out, but it also means to, because there's a Zadi, resurrection, bloom, burst forth, publish, export, release, discharge, spent. It's to put out a book, to publish a book. It's to just springtime. It's Zadi. There's another word that we ran into a few pages back, Zadi Aleph, which has to do with, it's translated your offspring, your children in the future, but it's actually anything you put your hand to would be Zadi Aleph. And again, I'm saying this because once you know what the letters mean, and then if you look through the dictionary enough and you come to memorize, there's certain meanings, dictionary meanings to two-letter words like Zadi Aleph. Well, what's Bet Aleph? To come in, to enter, to import. Zadi Aleph is export. But it's a synonym with Lamed Kaf. Go, get out. Once you start getting some of these things in your mind, now you're building up, as it were, an infrastructure of solid matters regarding his kingdom. The next word here, al eretz, well, that's toward the earth or regarding the earth. It's like motion toward, I will run with intentional favor, volitionally, zadi, pevav, nun, zafun. Hey, that's like the word Zephaniah. So again, if you say these words, it reminds you of other words, whether it's English or Japanese or some other languages or the names of books of the Bible. Like to worship is Ayin Bet Dalet, Obed, Obadiah. Obed, like obedience, same exact word. So if somebody is translating, Jacob, you are my servant. My servant, what does that mean? Well, you look at it the way it's written, and again, a number of these words bumped into that talk about for this week is uses that word, and it's just translated my servant, but Obed also means to worship. So you are my worshiper. It's also the word for slave, Obed. But it means to obey. It also means to work hard, to be at task, engaged in the action of doing what the servant was commanded to do. So if you go to church, and I'm not putting this down, but I'm just using it as the typical reference of my only reference for years of my life, you go to church. Okay, now there's prayer time, there's teaching time, and there's worship time. What do you do during worship time? You sing songs. Okay, so you have the worship leader playing music. Yeah, but what has that got to do with being hard at work doing what he said? Well, that attitude of worship, and it can be very beautiful, it can be a sacred space, but in my experience, it was speaking outwardly, but pulling something from within, not that you're turning in, but you're allowing this something in your heart to blossom, to Zadi Aleph. And you're not just supposed to sit there and sing words, although a lot of people do. And you're reading from the hymnal. Hey, it's your own fault if that's all you get out of it. You could be expressing. So worship music is a venue, is an occasion allowing you to do something that you can't probably muster on your own. So you go to church and it facilitates being a worshiper. And again, it's what you put into it. They can have better musicians, better instruments, a better sound system, better dim the lights, and I've seen some churches even have some kind of a fog effect and say, ooh, hey, this is kind of getting kind of romantically, and romantically means this ideal. Yeah, like being in the garden. I come to the garden alone while the dew is fresh on the roses. It's your own ideal of being able to relate to him, and there's nothing to put that down. However, It's not the meaning of the word Obed. Obed means do what he said. Hard at task with skilled hands, which is Aleph Mem Nun, Amuna, which is just simply translated faith, which is simply translated believe. You can believe, that's kind of intellectual, and not worship. Or you can believe as an act of worship. If you do what he said, you could do it with a disgruntled attitude, and it's not necessarily worship. It's just, all right, I'll do what you said. Why do you do what he said? Well, if you do what he said as an act of worship, you're just trying to earn your way to heaven. No, it has nothing to do with earning your way to heaven. You're doing what he said because he said to do it. If you do what he said, it's an act of worship because it's the word Obed. More on that in a minute. Let me get back to Zechariah 6:8. So this word Zephon, it means north. Run to the land of the north. Well, blossom, the ones who are running hidden and concealed. Hey, Nun, Yod, Het, Vav, Hanicho, immobilized, static, at rest, gentle, pleasant. That's kind of the opposite of running. Or is he saying that the hidden things are just laying immobilized and static, nothing happening? It's like, imagine if Yahuwah, now we don't know how he built the universe as terms of his engagement and how much is he engaged. I remember hearing years ago that Thomas Jefferson was what they call a deist, not a Christian per se, but a deist. Deity, Deus in Latin is God, the omnipotent, almighty, whatever you want to call him. It's just deism. Dios in Spanish, like Dios to God, you're leaving and you're turning somebody over to his care. Otherwise just translated goodbye, but even goodbye came from an old English saying of God be with ye. God be with you. God, G-O-O-D was from G-O-D. B, the letter B, with Y-O-U, ye. Goodbye was simply God be with you. Just etymology of the way words change over time. But why doesn't he just step in and make stuff happen? Or does he? What does he make happen? Whose voice does he listen to? Do you have to be Abraham, Moses, or David? Why would he listen to any one of our normal people's voices? And if things aren't happening on the face of the earth, they're just dormant, static, limbo. Yeah, everybody's getting along. There's no wars necessarily. There's no famines. There's no great inventions. That's the word chanicho. It's just sitting there kind of gentle and pleasant. But then there's et ruachi, Aleph Tav, pointing to the action of my ruach. Well, see, the word ruach is not just a spirit or mind, but it's also expanse or spreading out. So his ruach, the wind isn't blowing. It's just a still day. That could be nik ruach. Enlarged my disposition, profited. It's like if Elohim has the idea, says, I want to benefit my people. I want to bless my people. I want to enlarge what my spirit is doing among my people, and nothing's happening. He's got to do something to kick them, to dislodge their complacency, to get them in gear. Be'aretz Zaphon. And again, that word Zaphon, north, hidden, concealed, but it also means, if you look at Pei Vav Nun, Zadi, Pei Vav Nun, Zadi, like Zadi Aleph, is this sprout, this bloom. Pei Vav Nun, well, if you take out the Vav and just look at Pei Nun, that's the word for face, but it's also kind or sect or species. It's a word for face, and so people have different faces. It also then it has to do with looking towards or countenance or give regard to. It also, Pei Nun Hey, means to be a bachelor, unmarried, or on vacation, or hey, I have no obligation here. Well, what's that got to do with anything? Why should pay noon have to do with having an obligation? And then when you look at the Aaronic benediction, where Elohim tells Moshe, speak to Aharon and his son, saying, this is how you bless my people of Israel. Say to them, okay, here's the script. Ivor rekecha Yahweh, vaish mareka. Yair Yahweh, panav aleka. Well, that's panav. The V sound means his. Pen is face. So may he lift up his countenance. Was his countenance looking down? Was he doing paperwork? Or what do you mean lift up his countenance on you? Or does it mean turn in your direction? Well, if pay noon has to do with I'm unmarried, I'm a bachelor, I've vacated the premises, I've got no obligation to tend to anything, then the opposite is to say, what is his obligation to tend towards us? There's stuff in Deuteronomy we're going to look at, where he tells us specifically, look at Deuteronomy 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, but right in that area, the early Deuteronomy 5, I believe it was where he gives the 10 commandments. So right after he gives the 10 commandments, Deuteronomy 4 is the Shema. Read those chapters. If I can, if not this week, maybe in a couple of weeks, we're going to read through a couple of those, contemplating slowly, because they're of incredible significance when you contrast them with something else. Kind of like the variegated lines. If you could sit here and say, boy, those 3 white lines all of a sudden jump out, if all of a sudden you're looking at the white lines. But if you're looking at the black lines, it's like, what do you think you're looking at here? What path are we supposed to be on? Pay noon, form, variety. To pan is to scan across. Panorama is to see the whole vista. So even this word pay noon from Hebrew has gotten into these other languages. But this is Zadi pay vav noon. So Zadi pay, chirp, twitter, whistle. Zadi pay noon, decode, encrypt, decipher. Well, this is Zadi pay vav noon, but it has to do with hidden and concealed, Zephaniah, north. It has to do with decoding, encrypting, decode what was encrypted, which is the task of deciphering. And then you look at the dictionary and Zadi pay noon tav, Zephanath. Well, that was Joseph. Remember when he came to Egypt, got a different name, it was Zaphnath Paneach, pay ayin noon chet. Pei ayin noon is the word for discovery or breakthrough, but so is Zadi pay noon. He was able to decipher and decode what has been encrypted, that which was Zephon hidden. Well, how did Joseph do that? Remember, he had the goblet and he put it in Benjamin's grain sack and said, how dare you guys rip this off, to set up his brothers for coming back, being accused as criminals. And he says, don't you know that by this goblet I decipher? I have visions of the unknown, the unseen. Why would he do that? Isn't he playing into some sort of magic arts or making other people think he is? Well, the word for goblet is the name Joseph, Yosef. Somic pay, suf, yom suf, sea of reeds, is where we get the word soup, is where we get the word sofa. It's a straw that you use to suck up, so it's a reed. Once you start looking into the dictionary and look into the construction of these words, all these pictures come about. But the word Joseph literally means that he will add, he will increase, he will give to eat, he will feed, both of which he did. The dream coming true, putting him in that position, was he told about the famine and the years of plenty, and that people would come to his door, his threshold, in order to get fed. It's just amazing the play on words in Hebrew, playing into the Bible stories that you won't see unless you look at the Hebrew words. And when you do see it, you realize, gosh, hiding stuff in the words, encrypting stuff is Yahuwah's game. He loves this game. It's all through the scripture. The names of people, the names of places, just the names of actions and the different layers of meanings. And you realize this isn't just some task for us to busy ourselves with. This is his game. So that little picture I did with the scraggly alley cat, saber-toothed tiger, and saying this is a gladiator match. This is a game of swords. Sif, Samic Yodpe, is the word for sword or swordsman. Hence the katana and the odachai, samurai swords. And I'm tying this all in together, saying that this game, it's a dangerous game. It's a deadly game. We have gladiator contenders. Even the word gladiolus is that bulb that puts out a shoot that looks like a sword coming up before it sprouts up into the flower. It literally means a sword shape. The idea here, Zadi Pei Hey, let me go back to that. Look, observe, watch, foresee, expect, outlook, hoped for, and anticipated. Pei Vav Nun, embarrassed, helpless, perplexed, distracted, in doubt. So when we look at the circumstances, bring it present tense and say, gosh, there's all these threats, there's all these observations, there's all these various eschatologies, there's all these prophecies of doom and gloom, but of rapture and resurrection. And it's like, well, why didn't he show up yet? Why didn't he help us when we thought he would? We're embarrassed. We look helpless. The bad guys are coming to get us. They're going to eat our lunch. Perplexed. We're distracted. Oh, what about they're going to shut down the energy grid? There was some guy on the internet, just for what it's worth, just another voice. He's saying, look, I'm a time traveler and you guys don't believe me. I'm going to tell you guys something. Something's going to happen this day, February 12th, Sunday, that'll change the world forever. And you're going to remember that I told you because I'm a real time traveler and I come from elsewhere. It's like, yeah, well, nothing's happened yet. We'll see. I'm just saying, you get all these voices and say, who do you believe? Distracted, in doubt, perplexed? How do you decipher and decode what has been, Zadi Pei Hey, laid out, arranged to arrange a table or to cover over it and hide it? To arrange a table is also a synonym with ayin resh kaf, Eric. Okay, my take on the way this verse could be read, rather than looking at word for word like I just did to show you what each word basically is composed of, means burst out shouting, proclaiming, public assembly, my Aleph Tov. He imposed upon me the occupation of speaking about words, the commanded utterance, fine high words of declaration, revolutionary, publish their exhibition, make them perceptible, allow their bloom to be appreciated, cause them to be seen. The aspect of appearance being worthy, fit, suitable, to release the earth from its coma, resurrect its immobilized enthusiasm that my Ruach entombed in dormancy. The gentle blowing wind of my Ruach will yield clear explanation, give restoration to the hopelessness, doubtful and perplexed. Well, I'd say that's exactly where we are right now, and that's exactly why we have this channel and this Skype call happening and this erectology study, because this is like present tense. Today, this is where we're at. And I put as a note here, because nothing else seems to make sense correlated to what's written. In other words, you can look at what's written and say, well, why doesn't it seem to be happening that way? If Yahweh's own Ruach put everything into a phase of dormancy, immobilized, static, at rest, gentle and pleasant, nothing happening, and it's like winter time, and it's his wind of springtime, warm winds changing in the way the atmosphere works with the where the sun is on the earth, so things start budding and things start happening. Well, how do you do that? What's happening? Aleph Bet means to have a longing and a desire, which is a synonym with Shin Kuf, which is give to drink, or kissed, or to launch a ship. Like just springtime gets going, boy, these blackberries out here, when they start going, little tiny buds. Yeah, that's all really nice. But man, they go like gangbusters. Sometimes it seems like they grow a couple feet a day. What is it that will get things going? Talking about his words, talking about his language. Hopefully I'll remember, we'll do this maybe next week. At the chart, the big chart with the vertical stripes, there's a couple sentences at the very bottom of the page. I was talking to somebody earlier in the week, and I don't think anybody, maybe somebody's tried to figure out what that says. Something about, it's written in Ezekiel, and anyway, I've never had the class that taken the time to go back through and explain everything, especially the last two lines on that chart. But it basically says, when we pick up Yahuwah's stuff and start making it an issue, all of a sudden everything's going to change. That's what he said. But we were never told that. We were never told that we were supposed to have anything to do with making everything change. So here's a question. Elohim builds this beautiful Garden of Eden, and he puts Adam and Chua in the garden, Adam and Eve, as we know them. He says, eat whatever you want, shomer the garden, keep guard, keep it clean and tidy, so you don't twist your ankle walking on a rock or something. Don't eat that tree. Why did he stick the tree in the garden? Why did Elohim put the tree in the garden? And if that wasn't enough, why did he empower a Nachash to say, can you provoke them? Oh, wait a minute, by golly. He didn't provoke that Nachash to do it. In fact, he accursed the Nachash for doing it. Well, that's the way we have it written. That's the way we understand it. But if he didn't make the Nachash and empower the Nachash and let the Nachash talk to Adam and Chua, there's no way he would have provoked them to eat the forbidden fruit. Just saying. There's more to the story than what we might say just reading it quickly. There's a lot more to the story. If Elohim knows what's going on, then he allowed or caused the Nachash to be able to speak to Adam and Chua. Some people say, well, all the animals could speak before it's like, whatever. Somehow he knew what was going on, and he waited, and he just kind of let that tree be there, and he let the Nachash, translated serpent, be there. The word Nachash also means enchanting in copper, like the Copper Mountains, and it means bedazzling. It's like, ooh, look at that, shiny. That's what it means. Why did he have that tree in the garden, and why did he allow the extra voice, the extra urging of that Nachash to incite or compel Adam and Chua to do the very thing he told them not to do? Well, when he pulls the Israelites, approximately 3 million people, they say there were 600,000 men. So there's probably 600,000 women, and there's probably a bunch of kids. If there was 2 to a family, that's 2,400,000. And then there were sojourners and proselytes that weren't of Israel, that were moving out, other people of other lands that had been turned into slaves, and here's their chance to flee, plus some Egyptians. So there was about 3 million people leaving in the Exodus. There was a thing on, it was History Channel or something once years ago, and they showed 6 or 8 guys walking down the path, and it's like, is this Jesus and the disciples? No, there's not 12. Who are they supposed to be? Well, Moses in the Exodus, it was probably just a few guys. The story goes it was 3 million, but it's probably it's like, what? You're trying to tell people that the Exodus out of Egypt was this little group of one man with half a dozen cohorts? Gosh, well, people will believe anything. How do you know what to believe? All these different stories, all these different, how do you know what to believe? So as soon as they get out of Egypt, there was 10 plagues. Pharaoh and his entire army drown in the Sea of Reeds, Yom Suf. And then the Israelites pick up a bunch of weapons that got washed through the story because they went out without weapons. It says they went out armed, but the word armed is also equipped. It's the word chumash, chet mem We got Vav Mem Shin, which is the word for the number 5. There's 5 books of Torah. Just saying, you look at these words and you realize there's all these connections. Elohim, Yahweh, showed his great, powerful arm. And the first thing that happens, they're hungry and thirsty. There's no water. And they look at Moshe and say, "You bum, you idiot. What the heck are you doing dragging us out here? There's no water." Our animals, 3 million people. Didn't you have a plan before you actually, did they quickly forget that Yahweh is the guy who set up the plan, that there was 10 plagues, that he killed Pharaoh's firstborn and the Pharaoh and drowned the entire army of Egypt in the water? And did they just ignore all that? First thing they do is start complaining. And then when he provided water, it was bitter water, a place called Meribah. Rib, as in Reba, Resh Bet or Resh Yod Bet, means to contend or conflict. So he brought them to a place of contention. Why? Well, it seems like Elohim wants to put us to the test. So the word nun samik, nas, means that which is lifted up. It's a banner. Woohoo! Samik nun, or hey samik nun, hey is the bush. Nun samik also means to test and to try, to examine. It's to assay. You know, you get some gold, you bring it to the assayer's office, and he tries to determine how pure of a quality is. It's also the word essay. You take an exam in school and it's like, tell us what you know. It's like, oh, let me just say true or false. I got a 50% chance of being right. No, we're not going to tell you anything. You tell us what you know. That's the essay. So it's like, woo, you have to divulge the fullness of what you got. So when it says that Elohim will test and try us, talks about that in Deuteronomy 8. Also, it talks about something about testing and trying us in 1 Peter. And there's a bunch of other places. Just punch in the word test and try, or God tests and tries, and you punch up on Google search, and one came up to 25 places where he talks about this. So though I've heard people say, no, God doesn't try anybody, he certainly does, and it's very much part of the agenda. Meaning that this Nun Samik logo used for the Erectology group is not just a miracle, look, a providential escape, providential event, a way to escape miraculously, but it's also a test and a trial. It's like, oh, come on, nobody really likes tests, I don't think. Well, some people maybe do. If you're a champion athlete, a match is a trial, is like, who's got the better, this team or that team? Some people love tests. Deuteronomy 13:3-4. Do not listen to the words of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams. What prophet or dreamer of dreams? Well, so you get Deuteronomy 4, the Shema, Hear, O Israel, Yahweh your Elohim, Yahweh is Echad. And then you have Deuteronomy 5, you know, the Exodus 20, and then reiterated Deuteronomy 5, the 10 Commandments. And then you've got these other chapters, as I mentioned, 6-12. And then he says, now listen, I've just explained to you the rules, the regulations, the commandments, the ordinances, the statutes, the order, the protocols of the kingdom of heaven. This isn't some rabbi stuff. This isn't the laws of Moses. This is Yahuwah Zavot, the Elohim of Israel. This is his stuff, his Devarim, his words. The word Devarim is not just word and speech. It's also matters. It's business. It's affair. It's the stuff of our engagement that we were led and guided, that we agreed to. These are stipulations of agreement, which is a synonym with Aleph Vav Tav, which is the word for oat, pronounced oath, if you give the TH value to the Tav, os, if you give the S value like the Ashkenazi pronounce it. And it's a sign, it's a symbol, it's an oath, it's an agreement, but it's also a letter of the alphabet. So symbols of agreement, like here's an X, that's the letter Tav, which means a sign or a mark. Every one of the letters of the alphabet are a mark, an indicator, a thematic logogram stating what's the dynamic, the relationship that Elohim has with this particular people group that he called Israel. And then, so you go through the first 12 chapters of Deuteronomy. When you get to Deuteronomy 13, he says, listen, I'm going to tell you how this works. If a dreamer has a dream or a prophet has a vision and they tell you something and it doesn't come true, that's not from me. If it's from me, it's going to come true. I'm telling you, if I give somebody a dream or a vision, it will come true. And you go, oh, give regard to this guy. He's got a message from Yahuwah as a dream or a vision. However, if he tries to lead you to Elohim Achrim, gods of others. See, the word achar means other, strange, next, different, delayed, late in arriving, something other than I've told you today present tense. So if it comes another generation, 1,000 years from now, 2,000, 3,000 years from now, in the future, the word achar has to do with the future. Elohim is the translation of gods. So if it's other, different, strange, next, something that's not what you're familiar with, that's achar, and then acharim, Elohim, the im is the plural, like seraphim, im, the I am is the plural suffix. Eloah, or Allah, is deity. A deity, different, other, strange, next, future. Elohim achrim, but it's translated gods of others, or other gods. Those same two words translated both ways. And so what he says here, if they try to counsel you or compel you, even if their dream and vision come true, if they try to encourage or urge you, like the Nachash in the garden, to do something other, achar, as if it was a, hey, Elohim told me, well, is it a god of other? Is it an other god? Or is it just giving counsel that is different from what Elohim has told us? It's still all Elohim Achrim. And he says in Deuteronomy 13, verses 3 and 4, do not listen to the words of that prophet or dreamer of dreams. For, now here's why, this is what's going on. So this gives us insight as to the staging of our conscious experience of life on earth. Yahweh your Elohim is nun samic, trying and testing you to know. He knows the future, he knows everything. He wants to know whether you love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart and all your soul. And I've heard it said, look, he knows everything, so it's us. He wants us to know whether we love him with all our heart and soul. Well, it's probably both. The next verse, Deuteronomy 13:4, walk after Yahweh your Elohim and fear him. Guard his commands, obey his voice, serve him, serve, that's obed, that's worship, and cling to him. That's how you halakha Yahweh. This is how you walk the Yashar Derek, the straight path of Yahweh your Elohim, Yahweh Zavot, the Elohim of Israel, and fear him. Oh, be afraid. He's a big, scary guy. No, not to be mocked. The word fear, Yod Resh Aleph. But Yod is a prefix. Resh Aleph Hey is the word to see. Why should the word fear and the word to see be essentially the same word of Resh Aleph? What do you see? Well, if you have no idea who Yahweh Zavot is, oh, he's the big, gentle Jesus, meek and mild. Somebody was saying, their mother has, baby Jesus, meek and mild, and then they also have the crucifix on the wall, and they're saying to the mother, hey, you realize that's the same guy, don't you? It's like, what? Yeah, baby Jesus and the guy, the crucifix, ripped in shreds and hanging on this torture implement, that's the same person. And it's like, they didn't really make the connection ever before. Why not? I'll tell you, I've talked to some people, you expect that everybody knows this stuff. They don't. I know people that are Christians. I know some people that are preachers, and they don't know the names of the people in the Bible stories. They don't know things that I take for granted. Well, I've learned this stuff since I was a little kid going to Christian school, and I've spent, let's just say, many hours studying, reading, hearing, contemplating. Not everybody has. People just don't know. They don't know because some Bibles don't have Deuteronomy in the Bible. Some Bibles are just New Testament, maybe with the Psalms and Proverbs. Millions of people on the face of the earth have never heard these words. Walk after Yahweh your Elohim, chalakah, and that word after is also the word achar, because it means future, but it also means following after, which is a synonym with the word Yaakov, Jacob, like the wake of a ship. Got 5 minutes here. So in the future, this is how you fear. What do you fear? Yirah, Resh Aleph Hey, what he allows you to see on exhibition. And if something has been hidden, Zaphon, and he, end of the 2007 or 30-year curse, all of a sudden he unveils it and allows you to put together the deciphered mystery. It's like, whoa. And remember, there was that one king of Israel, maybe it was Judah. They were going about their business and living their lives and everything was just fine, sedentary, relaxed and peaceful. And they were cleaning up the temple, hadn't been cleaned in years. And these people rooting around and what the heck, falling down behind a cabinet. There's a Torah scroll. Look at that there thing. We haven't seen one of them forever. They opened it up, bring it to the king. He says, well, read it. And all of a sudden there's, it's Yahweh saying stuff like in Deuteronomy. He's like, wow, should I pay attention to this? Or is this written for some other people? Nobody knows. Go call a prophet. So they find some prophet and bring him in and says, you haven't ever told us about this. Will you please ask Yahweh and find out if we should regard this, or is this for some other person, some other concern? And so the prophet says, yeah, I'll go check in on the boss. And he comes back and says, oh man, you better regard this right now. What? And all of a sudden he just put out a decree that everybody, it's kind of like the king of Nineveh when they heard Jonah's words. It's like, why would they pay attention to Jonah? He's a Heb. He's one of them Hebrews. Who cares? They worship Dagon, the fish god. And imagine a giant fish, whether it was a whale shark or something, a giant fish that's never seen in these parts. Somehow, picture this. If Jonah is in the land of Israel and he hops on a boat sailing across the Mediterranean and heading out towards Spain, and all of a sudden he gets eaten by a fish, that fish would have to go through the Straits of Gibraltar, all around Africa, up the other side, up the Persian Gulf, all the way up the Euphrates, and barf, Zadi Aleph him out on the shore of Nineveh. What? That fish was hauling tail, man. He must have been hundreds of miles an hour swimming all that way. And then, boom, you just launch Jonah out of his mouth, and he's bleached white, I'm guessing, with the stomach acids and smelling like the fish. And he comes up to the people that worship the fish god and he says, repent or you're doomed. That's Resh Aleph Hey. That's fearing Yahweh. What he allows us to see all of a sudden. Okay, Deuteronomy 13:5, and that prophet or dreamer of dreams should be put to death because he has spoken apostasy against Yahweh your Elohim, which is the word Shin Tav, which means satanic. Who brought you out of Egypt, who redeemed you from the house of bondage to make you stray. That guy is trying to make you stray from the way. That's Satan from the derrick in which Yahweh your Elohim commanded you to walk. Gee, that looks like law. Thus you shall purge the evil from your midst. We'll take a break. Let me give you one more verse here, 13:14. Then you shall inquire, search out, ask diligently, and see if the matter is true and established, that the abomination was done in your midst. If the guy said, let us go and serve Elohim Achrim, Elohim that you have not known. So Yahweh puts the burden, get the word from the prophet. No, he put the burden on us, his people, to think. Inquire, search out, ask diligently, conduct an investigation. Is this what Yahweh said or is it not? How do you do that? And then if he did this for them in Deuteronomy, if he did it in the Garden of Eden, if he did it in Exodus, do you think he's done it today? We'll take a break.